Good afternoon. This is Gillie Revolutionary Radio. And today I want to reason from a principal position dealing with African unity and how African unity at this present moment is achievable. But if we hold on to the whole concept of what unity is and what unity means, we will never be able to achieve the type of unity that is conceived by the average African or African descent in this world. When we speak of African unity, we have this tendency, when we listen to a lot of brethren and sisters and they use these common terms, why can't all African comes together? To be blunt, that is a false conception of what African unity can be, what it should be, and what it will be. Unity does not have to come from the commonly conceived perception of everybody coming together. There is nothing in this world where everybody ever come together on, where everybody ever agree on. So for us to understand this phenomenon of unity in general, we have to understand that there are certain psychological concepts and certain concepts within how nature organizes itself that literally mandates how unity takes place under different conception. So we're going to deal with how nature mandates things. And I have dealt with this, how nature mandates things, in other reasoning from different perspectives. Nature organizes itself within a certain dispensation that literally dictates how something gets done most efficiently. You see, we're dealing with the principle of mathematics. And when you deal with the principle of mathematics, you realize that the principle of mathematics is the ruling and governing principle of all things upon the face of the earth, regardless of what you and I may think about it. Now I'm going to give you a simple arithmetic equation just to lay the foundation of this reasoning. You take the arithmetic of 2 plus 2 is 4, or 3 plus 3 is 6, or 1 plus 1 is 2. Now when you take any numerical number, it is only a symbolical representation of anything that is on the face of the earth. 1 plus 1 equal 2 means nothing outside of the fact that it is a symbolic representation. Now how do we make 1 plus 1 equal 2 goes beyond a symbolic representation? You have to apply an object to it. 1 mango plus another mango equal 2 mango. So you're applying the symbol of numerical figures to something that's tangible in creation. 2 cars plus 2 cars equal 4 cars. Without you attaching the reality aspect of creation to the symbolical numbers mean nothing. So it is the same thing when we speak of unity. In the reverse, if you do not apply the mathematical equation that governs unity, where nature teaches us how different forms of unity can be composed, then we're running around in this illusion where we keep talking about we want unity and we want everybody unite. That's a fallacy. That is a fallacy. I gave an example of how mathematical equation impacts people psychologically. And I gave an example in one of the reasons I show you that if you want a certain type of gathering to be conducive to a particular outcome, how you set up the room and the type of sitting that you formulate in that room will dictate how the outcome of the meeting is, no matter how each individual may be intelligent in that room. Nature itself commands a certain respect if you want to get a certain outcome. But we have this tendency to violate these principles, believing that because you desire unity, you're gonna get unity. And if most of us should be honest with ourselves, our own malignant characteristics is what create this unity. You know how our disposition is. If things don't go our way, we take up the things and we leave, we quit. Or we bogart other people out because it has to be your way. And the same principle apply where you can only conceive of unity in the way that your limited ability is able to visualize it. So we have to oversee. You think European unite? You think European have unity? You think European does have unity if have unity? You think they are not tribal entities in Europe? You think they are not tribal entities in India and tribal entities in China? No. You take the European countries. The commonality of them is not all of them thinking the same way politically are thinking the same way in terms of their desired outcome. But it's the centuries of building of one economic system where the ruling class is inculcated with a particular economic system where these ruling class in turn bends the will of the people to their will. Remove the financial all that Europe has over European opinion, and you see tribal war break out in Europe more than any other continent on the face of this earth. Who do you think brought about World War I? What brought about World War II? What brought about the 100 Years' War in Europe? What brought about Napoleon going up into Russia? You think that's unity? The more you go back is the more you see how balkanized Europe is. But because they have the financial dollar to paper over their differences, and they all recognize, I'm speaking about the ruling class, we're not talking about the lower class. The ruling class all recognize if they don't maintain a sense of unity and bend the will of their individual nations to that sense of unity, then there will be no unified Europe to exploit the world. So what we have to understand in this thing that we keep preaching about, why can't we all come together? You don't need all of us to come together. You don't need all of us to come together. What we have to recognize are those certain basic fundamental principles. Now, in order for a nation or a people to have unity, you need to study and develop the cadre principle of leadership. There are more than enough Africans and people of Africans descent on the face of this earth to create a cadre out of their numerical numbers in order to organize and centralize and liberate Africa and Africans on the face of this earth. Now look at guerrilla warfare. Go to any country on the face of the earth. When any country commences guerrilla warfare to liberate their countries from colonial occupation, you believe it's when everybody come to unity? You believe Vietnam liberate themselves when all Vietnamese agree on these things and one thing? You believe Chairman Mao and China liberated themselves in the 50s from European occupation because all Chinese agree? No. It means that they had enough of an educated class which they were able to formulate into a cadre, a central core that is required by any movement to think from a principled position. Then even if only 1% of that nation builds a cadre, you can bend the will of the masses to the principles of that cadre, no matter how long it takes through the process of education. Robert Mugabe, how much people Robert Mugabe start the revolution with in Zimbabwe in the 70s? He started with 7. He was a school teacher in Ghana, and he take him salary and pay 7 people to go and get military training. When the entire so-called Rhodesia at that time were under the Ian Smith occupation, contributed by all of Europe. And Robert Mugabe and 7 men sit down. And what happened in the 80s? Them run out the Rhodesian them. So this fallacy that we keep reinforcing about we all need to unite. And we all need to think a certain way. And we all need to do a certain thing. Nah man, we pass them like a kindergarten the thinking, man. We pass them kindergarten the thinking. We're bigger than that to them. You remember one time, I'll give another example of this principle. We were inculcated coming into so-called independence in the 60s or whatever year other African countries came into independence. We were led to believe that you need a lot of money to start business, you know. And therefore, because we knew at that time that we did not have any type of financial backings, we are never envisioned that. And then as time went on and we travel and we gain experience, you come to a certain way like you don't need a lot of money to start any business in this world. You need dedication. You need sacrifice. These are the things that are available to each and every human being. And it will lead you to all the other necessities that you need to start a business. But we were led to believe that you need $1 million to start any type of business. Or the equivalent of this $1 million in any country. So these are the misconceptions that we have. And once we start to feed this misconception, it starts to inoculate the entire thinking process. What are some of the examples of this inoculated thinking process that tends to hold us down? Simple everyday language that we use. Africans can't unite. We have a divisive people. Look at the Europeans, look at the Chinese, look at them, how they can unite. Then when you plant those type of negative thoughts in your own people without understanding the principle of leadership and organizing, what do you expect from the people? What do you expect from the masses? Learn to draw upon history that draws upon the natural universe and you get the answers to your everyday problem. You think Europeans just get up one day and build an aeroplane? No. Them study nature. Them study everything that fly. It goes into insect and study the giants. All the giants leverage itself in flight and then goes into metal shop and mimic the makings of those giants. Or whatever aerodynamics they find from any flying animal in the world. And then they make a prototype. So they are not doing anything that's genius. It is when you recognize that nature gives you the answers to all your problem, family. And learn how to deal with that. Now let's deal with another aspect of the fallacy that you hear emanate from the mouths of the so-called intelligent everyday. We want one united political Africa, all the way from North Africa to the tip of South Africa. How you will get that? Explain that to me. How you will get it in the way that you conceive it? all of them have one government. We could just deal with that person. All of them have one government. Well, I have some bad news for you. If you believe those people in North Africa who is inculcated with a superiority doctrines over the Africans in the South, if you believe that they are going to form a political union with the South, where the South will carry the majority, you have another thought coming. You don't learn from history. You don't learn from how the Arabs deal with us. You don't learn from how those people have a different complexion deal with us, even when they're born in Africa. You forget, say, just in the 70s, them put back Egypt in Africa geographically. Yet demographically, they do not consider themselves Africans. So when we get up every day and talk about we want one political union from the tip of the north to the tip of the south down at the Cape, we're talking nonsense. We're talking nonsense. The only way we as African will get any control over the entire African continent is economically. We have to go subdue the north economically and therefore be able to influence them politically. But if you believe that them going to abolish their borders and abolish their constitution and come up under the rule of the South, be able to upon a numerical disposition and make non-Muslims rule over the Muslims of the North, what type of childish thinking is that? The only way we will ever get full political control of the entire African continent is to get control of it economically. And when you get control of it economically, we will be able to influence it politically, whether the borders are there or not. And if push come to shove by we having economic domination over the entire continent, we can dominate it militarily. But stop harboring this childish mentality about them going to unite you under one government. That's stupidity. You're not studying history. You're not studying the fact of the disdain that these people have for the majority of the people on the African continent. You even have black people on the continent who have disdain for them own Africans. Deeply inculcated in them by the false leadership that has been imposed upon them for centuries. So don't make us keep wasting time. I talk about it. Now one more thing, and I can't touch on it. We have this tendency to neglect cultural differences amongst ourselves and as a people. And we have this tendency to perceive cultural differences as a negative aspect of our onward march to liberation. Well, I have another sad news so now. If you believe that all the different enclaves of cultural differences amongst ourselves, which was there from the beginning, if you believe that all these cultures are going to merge into one African culture, because those are points that I hear certain intellectuals articulate. You have another sad thought coming, brethren and sisters. We must learn to use the differences as a form of strength in our pursuit of unity from a different perspective from the common perception of what unity is or what we believe we're taught unity should be. The cultural differences between our people, both on the different islands, and the cultural differences in Africa, and the cultural educational differences that were inculcated with us from all the metropolitan former colonial masters and still present colonial masters. If you believe all those differences going to disappear and go back to a time that never exists, but we believe exists when all of Africa shared one cultural commonality. And I'm not speaking of a principle base that establishes all commonality. We're talking about in the everyday goings of these people from different geographical locations. those things is not going to disappear whether we wish it to disappear or not. It can never disappear. So we must learn to embrace it and approach it from the perspective we can strengthen our resolve for unity. But not unity in the old-fashioned way that we were taught unity has to come, and if unity does not come that way, then there can be no unity. Because once you get caught up into that concept of what unity, you are exactly where the foreigners want you to be, because they will always make sure, since that's the only way you can see unity, they are going to make sure that you will never attain that type of unity. Outside of the fact that that unity don't exist. But because you believe that's the way, you believe that every black man and every black woman on the face of the earth must come to one common agreement. Knock that off, man. Knock that off. We pass them stage there. What appears to be this unity amongst us can be our most valuable strength. So let's apply an academic principle to these things, and that is why I address in one of the past reasoning about the principle of philosophy, which is a governing philosophy of life. The philosophers and our upcoming philosophers must address these things, must make these things common knowledge to people, to let people know that a whole nation and a whole people do not have to think the same way in order to have unity, because nowhere on the face of this earth does any other group of people thinks in one collective whole just to achieve what they achieve in life. What we fail to acknowledge and recognize is the principle of organization and leadership. This is where we're lacking, in addition to the fact of lacking the proper philosophy, because we have a philosophical foundation that was laid down for us. The philosophy and opinion of Marcus Mosiah Garvey, and it is not an all in all, but that's the bedrock foundation on which other philosophers should come and flesh it out, delve into each and every singularity aspect that Marcus Garvey touched upon, and bloom it out, spell it out more clearly, more definable for this dispensation that we're in. So when we speak of the principle that governs leadership, what happened to the ANC when the ANC was formed in 1912? You believe when the ANC was formed in 1912, I believe Chief Lututile was one of the organizers of that. Same the chief that they killed on a railway. White man kill him and make a train run over him in South Africa. You think when the ANC was formed in 1912, that all of South Africa agreed that they should form the ANC? Or all of the South Black Africans that were under oppression and apartheid in South Africa came to one agreement with that? That was a minority agreement, an unverifiable and an unregistered number in percentage form that came together and said, we need to lead our people, we need to form a leader. You never need everybody to do that. And that was in 1912. Go back to Namibia when it was under the colonial rule of Southwest Africa. During the German occupation, when the first modern day form of genocide was carried out, it was not carried out in Germany by the Reich of Hitler during World War II. All the principles of genocide were practiced in Namibia, then known as Southwest Africa, from the 1800s. And all the generals who led the genocide against the Namibian people in the 1800s, it was their sons and grandsons who remained in the military that orchestrated the genocide in Germany in World War II. And I say that to say, the reason why I mentioned Namibia in this reasoning, that one of the major incidents that took place in Namibia in the 1800s, that sparked a liberation in the 1800s in Namibia, it was a Namibian chief who had a bow and arrow. And that's what he began the war with against the German. And when modern flying objects came into being and it was employed by the German military against the Namibian people, the Namibian people tried to shoot down helicopters with bow and arrow. I said that to say, you do not need everyone to agree on any formulated principle in order to trigger the liberation struggle to the next height for the African people, which it needs to be elevated to. We already have enough principled, educated, intelligent people upon the face of the earth from the African race that can spark a worldwide revolution for free Africa. We have more than enough. And this fallacy talk about we need to do this in order to organize, and we need to do this, that train are gone already. That train are gone. You see, we in the West, you know, we as African in the West, we come from a very unique and particular position when you speak of nations, you know. It is not a coincidence why when the African wars of liberation and independence started in Africa, it was not a coincidence that they called for the liberation of the land, you know. Because Africa, the land that was under their feet, was recognized by them as theirs from the beginning of time. So when the liberation struggle began, I'm using this as an example, when the liberation struggle began in Africa, not one of them began. None of them got started from a cry of more pay, better wages. None of them. Those were only appendages that became part of the struggle later. Every single African liberation struggle began with the cry for liberation of the land. That is a principle. That is a principle that we recognize by leader, that the cry for the land must come to the fore in order to galvanize and mobilize those later who they need to put in the forefront of armed struggle. Now let's come to the Caribbean. Which Caribbean island struggle you know? Outside of maybe the Haitian Revolution, and a good person would not put the Haitian Revolution in it. So I'm going to reaffirm my first principal argument. Which Caribbean island do you know that began their struggle and maintained their struggle out of freeing the land? Not one. And you know why? Because the Caribbean islands are the only nation islands that were formed purely out of an economic perception. Africans were brought into captivity in the West to serve economic reasons and purpose. Africans over the centuries, their main cry was working without compensation. And what happened when we came up in the 30s? Then trade unions were formed, advocating for more wages and better work conditions. And out of those unions came political parties really, and not the other way around, because of the 1838 strike down on the waterfront in Kingston. So all of our nations in the Caribbean were formed out of economic cry, not a cry for liberation of the land, because we were never inculcated at any time in our history that the land belongs to us. We are most, if not everyone, of us dreamt of returning to Africa, whether in our dream or in reality. So those are the two different compositions where I'm showing you where here you have two different geodemographic situations that are the historical base that imbue the revolutionary spirits in these two different hemispherical places from a different position. It would be ridiculous for people in Africa to fight their liberation struggle based upon the fact that they want more higher wages. when their everyday reminder was under their feet. The land was stolen. The land belongs to us and our ancestors. So it is most natural, by the mathematical equation of the ruling principles of the earth, that it must be a cry for liberation of the land. It has to be a cry for the liberation of the land in Africa. And on the other hand, it is no coincidence that the liberation struggle in these modern dispensations in the Caribbean came out of an economic cry, and not for liberation of the land, but an economic cry. Later, independence and all that came out only as an appendage. And these are not positions that the leaders just sit back and say, we're going to take these positions. No. The historical development of the conditions of the people dictates how the cry evolve. So if the people, if the leaders in Africa, during the commencement of their liberation struggle, had commenced their struggle from the position, we want more pay, and we want higher pay, and we want to get occupation, different type of occupation and different jobs, that would have been an alien concept to them, an alien thought. Now some people may want to point to South Africa and say, well, look at South Africa. In the 80s and the 90s, the struggle were developed out of the National Mine Workers Union and all those different unions. But no, those appendages to the struggle only join on later to better galvanize the people. But at no time was in South Africa the cry for the land was not the number one principle. And it is still the number one cry in South Africa today, because the majority of the land is still owned by colonial occupiers. So when we speak of leadership, these are the things that leadership has to look at. Talking about we are not united from a conceptual base, that is foolishness. We have more than enough of us that understand the principle of the desire for a catching leadership. That it is there. So what is holding us back? You know what is holding us back? Two fundamental things. Two fundamental things. One of the things that holding us back is our lack of desire to take the next very necessary step in the liberation struggle that needs to be taken. And you know what that is? To challenge the existing establishment from a principled position. We lack that. We have a fear of that. You see, when you go to Africa, one of the lacking principled position in Africa is that the people still think tribally. They have not fully grasped the concept of nation made out of more than one nation. So give an example. When you go to any modern day geographically constituted nations in Africa, each and every single geographically bound nation has within its geographical location multiple nations. So whenever a politician needs to place himself at an advantage over other politicians within the same modern day configured nation, you know what they do? They appeal to tribal sentiments. They appeal to the cheapest, the lowest denominator concept in order to gain political power. So no matter how highfalutin they may speak and think in terms of nation building, they have not grasped the concept of what nation building is. The only nation that has been imbued in them is their own tribal based nation, their own ethnic based nation. So when every little second class politician wants to gain political power, his first natural instinct is to appeal to his tribal base. And some of them will appeal to this tribal base to total destruction because they have no recognition of the nation state in its modern configuration within a geographical boundary. They have not grasped that. We who have been held captive in the West, we are more equipped to grasp that. Why? Because we have lost our tribal identity. We have lost our tribal identity. I speak for Africans now. We lost that. So our more natural nation identifiable instinct is rallying around the geographical boundaries we find ourselves. So we get up and we say, yeah man, we're proud for the Jamaicans, we're proud for the Trinidadians, we're proud for the Barbadians, we're proud for the Grenadians, St. Vincent and all these islands. Yeah. That only became possible because we lost our tribal identification. We lost our biological nation from which we descend. And that losing of that aspect of identity make us more willing to identify with that geographical based nation. But it is not easy for when you go to Nigeria for the Igbos and the Yoruba and the Yorubas, and I don't know if there are Fulanis within there, that these different nation states that are within one geographical nation state known as Nigeria. These people do not conceive Nigeria as their number one concept of nation building, except when they hold half of the continent. So when you're half of the continent now, a man from Igbo land, where in a Nigeria will consider himself a nation unto himself. When you meet him in America and you say, what nation you from, him knows if him say Igbo land, nobody don't know what I'm talking about. So for conversational purposes, he will say, I am from Nigeria. But if he meets another Nigerian, you think him say I'm a Nigerian? Him say him is a Yoruba, or him is a Fulani, or him is a Igbo, or whatever other ethnic nation him conceive himself. Don't forget about the Biafran war we fight in Nigeria and the 70s family. Millions dead, you know. Because the Igbo don't consider themselves part of Nigeria. They want back them where them conceive as of them wholly Asian nation. Other nation that them identify with another nation that them are struggle to get back. So when you're talking about not only the differences between the modern day constituted national geographical boundaries, like 56 of them in Africa. So that is 56 differences on that level there. And we don't get down to the tribal based nation where that is within each of these nations. And we don't get down to the differences in our religion. And we don't get down to the difference within certain ethnicity in the north. So where are we coming from when we talk about you want one political union and you want what? You may desire that, but it's not based on a mathematical reality. The only mathematical reality a unified Africa will ever be achievable out of is from an economic domination by our own people. And no matter how the Arabs in the north are those who have been Arabized, because a lot of people don't know this, you know. 90% of the people in Egypt are not Arab, you know. But they are Arabized, they are adopted by Arab culture. They have adopted the Muslim religion. But when you go into Egypt, or you take up any statistical document and break it down in ethnic wise, the only people in Egypt where is Arab is the ruling class, you know. The Nubians are the majority people in Egypt. And those differences ain't not come to the fore yet for we talk about African unity. So we understand today and we learn through historical references that to dominate Africa politically and militarily, you have to do it first economically. And in order to do it economically, you don't need every African to agree. You need a cadre of African leaders who are on principled position and understand how to run government. You know what I'm saying? from a political disposition. Most black people on the face of the earth today don't know if to govern, you know. They don't know if to govern. What we do is we go to European institution and we learn so-called political science and political agitation and political organization from the European way. We have learned political leadership from a perspective that was basically good for Europe. I think we can transplant it to Africa, and we can transplant it in the Caribbean and get good governments. You'll never get good governance by through such an imitation. So first and foremost, I want to go into the term cadre, because I keep referencing that term. We need to have a cadre. So what is a cadre? A cadre basically is a group of organized people that has bought mentally, physically, spiritually into a certain doctrinal teaching. That's where a cadre is. We believe in a scientific approach to the things that we desire, and we study how to achieve it scientifically, not out of no emotional attachment to it, but scientifically. And once we have bought into that scientific approach to whatever that desire may be, and create a unified organizational structure around it, you have a cadre. One of the things where has given us a sense of false leadership over centuries is because we all may be able, as leaders now, not the whole people of the whole nation, because that's impossible. But a lot of time leaders can only agree upon one thing and then them dedicate them life to struggle against that one thing, and then when that one thing is removed, them get discombobulated again. Now what do I mean by that? We all can agree. Let's use Cuba. In the struggles in the 1950s in Cuba with Fidel Castro, there were many different political and economic ideologies that came together on one basic agreement, you know, that the president at that time, Batista, and the elks that came before him, has to be removed from power because they were seen as corrupt. So it takes nothing for us to come together and say, alright, here we are going upon. We have a fight to get out that corrupt leader there. You know what usually happens? Based upon the mathematical formulation and principles. You see, after them get rid of that one man where them agree if you get rid of, the whole leaderships disintegrate. And now it becomes, how do we rule? It is no longer what solidified us, which was to remove that corrupt leader. Now we have gotten rid of that corrupt leader. No differences come to the fore. How shall we rule? So those who believe in communism, them say communism must rule. Those who believe in socialism, say socialism must rule. Those who believe in fascism start to advocate for the fascist principle. Those who believe in so-called democracy, and then the whole organization disintegrate. So we understand that having just a desire in our situation, having our desire to remove Babylon from our neck, to get away from European domination, that are the easiest part of the equation. The hard part is how do you govern after that? And when you threaten the interests of the colonial masters, while at the same time within your rank you have differences, you think it takes much for the colonial powers to overthrow you? If we think we need to remind you of Lumumba and Kwame Nkrumah, and Sankara and all those great African leaders who were assassinated. I can't say when them reach them prime, because them never did nowhere close to them prime, because them did young. It is because of the ideological difference within those so-called nation builders that led their country to independence or so-called independence. So these are principles we must recognize what is necessary and stop harbor these infantile position about in order for we achieve unity we all need for things certain way. That has never been achievable on the face of the earth amongst no people. It is leadership that dictates to the masses where we need to go. And those who may have decided to work in the interests of the former colonial power, they will bend them. We bend them will, because we cannot afford to let a colonial mentality hold us back. Let me give you an example. Right down I say in Jamaica, in Africa, in the Caribbean. Today when we study behavioral science and we study psychology, we know how detrimental it is for a little youth to go to church every Sunday and I look up to a white man and say I got that in our family. We know how detrimental that is to the psyche of the youth and the psyche of the nation and its negative impact upon the future development of the nation and the people. And yet we buy into a principle that every family have the right to raise them picnic the way them choose to. But if a man raise him picnic to be criminal, you condemn him. He don't have the right to raise him picnic to be a criminal. You draw a line there, so. But the nation refused to draw a line where the vast majority of the upcoming nation builders, my psyche are being traumatized and damaged from these theological teachings that have been pushed by Christendom throughout the Caribbean and throughout Africa. So what nation building we talking about? Now to remove that concept of teaching our future generation to worship a white God and worship a white man. You think we need everybody in Jamaica to agree with that? Or we need everybody in the Caribbean to deal with that? Or we need everybody in Africa to deal with that? Nah, man. We have the capacity to force the will of the nation, to make the proper adjustment that is required, to remove the psychological trauma there from our future. We're not going to talk about no little one man in a church have no right to put up no white God and damage the psyche of our people. So when we go back to the Cadre principle, we're talking about the ability to organize from a principle scientific position, because there's a scientific approach to all things that needs to be approached economically, politically, educationally, security-wise, nutrition. Scientific approach to all things give you the most efficiency in any approach than any other approach you may make. So let's do our brethren and sisters with this thinking, but we all need to think one way. Let's get away from this infantile thinking that we need all of Africa to unite politically. Stop these infantile fantasy thinking. Learn to think more strategically. Learn these are principles of true leadership. We're not going down that line of the... You know, I'm telling you something. If a man start a little YouTube thing, sometimes I get some question addressed to me, and I welcome all question and I welcome all comment. But sometimes when certain question is proposed, when these questions are proposed to me, certain questions, it's not a question that can engender any elevation. It's a, sometimes you get some question that is more, it just start a controversy. It just become debatable. It's just a questions that maybe asked to sound intelligent. But they have no basis in reality. A lot of these questions, put them aside, man. Those are what them calling a modern day time some gotcha question. I go ask you a question so I can say me get you. Knock that off, man. Knock that off. A forward march where I go. We are talking about a more faculty revolutionization in our concept. Organizationally. Them things that are achievable in a today time for me. And the things that are necessary to bring about that principal position. It's a lack of understanding of what true leadership is, of what true organization is, of what true dedication is, of what true principle is, of what true discipline is. But don't make me hear when I give again a talk about we are a people we can't unite. We don't unite already. Based on the limited resources where we have, we are the most organized people upon the face of the earth. The most. And give great credence to the Africans in America, but demonstrate that to it. Because even under oppression in America, Africans in America can bring out 1 million people in the street. And them live under the guns every day. So now come me no hear nothing about we no unite. And we don't have what it take to unite. We have that pan lack. We have that pan lack. What we lack is scientific leadership. A scientific leader come through the principle of cadreism. And that's how we have to go with it. You see a lot of us too, you know. If you look at Africa, where the cry for liberation was the freeing of the land. Also in line with that concept was their natural, historical, vibrational existence to wage liberation warfare. You know how much blood the liberation warfare waged in Africa. Angola, Mozambique, Guinea-Bissau, Zimbabwe, Namibia. You think a little people then arms them take up and free themselves? Why you think in the Caribbean our most potent military liberation took place when the majority of the people in these islands were born in Africa? They don't teach you that in a school, you know. And as more of us were given birth to in the Caribbean, and the more the real fight get beat out away. And the more the real fight get knocked out away. But today we hide behind intellectualism, when to the contrary is where liberation may lay. Think about that little thing that we just saying now. When the majority of captured people on these islands were born in Africa, that was the time when the greatest and the most liberation military warfare took place on the island. And as time passed, and the demographic transition started to make place where more and more people get born on the island. And the more and more we lack the spirit to fight. Because these people have made it their duty to inculcate fear in us. And because we have this deeply imbued fear within a lot of us, we hide behind intellectualism. We hide behind peace. We hide behind love. We hide behind out of many we are one. You know why? Because we are coward. Yeah, so we hide behind those little principles. Even though most of us don't truly believe in it. And you know we don't believe in it. Watch how we act when we encounter each other and we think we can leverage the power against each other. And it shows you what the real state of mind there. But because we're afraid because of psychology and behavioral science that was imbued in us from a certain perspective, we hide behind shallow terms. That is one of the chasm within our psychological state of existence where we always talk about why we can't unite and fail to recognize that we are one of the most united people from the face of the earth. Remember what I tell you, if you change your perspective at how you look at the obstacle change. If you get up every day and tell a little youth, say your youth are idiot, you think I go to the youth are going to turn idiot. I'm going to build the moon thinking process that him is an idiot. And then you know, get caught in a circle, say no. You know, so I always said that the company was an idiot. You know, so he turned out to be a big, good idiot. Lacking the understanding that a youth trigger it in the youth. The youth was a genius. And you inculcate in the youth from a youth, say the youth will never go away. That the youth is stupid and fool. And you make it become a self-fulfilling practice, not only out of your action, but out of the youth action. Then when the youth go into a fool man or woman, you talk about, so maybe not tell you that. But you not acknowledge how you cause it. It's the same thing when we get up every day and talk about Africans can unite. And we don't fail to repeat it 1,000 times. Then what you think over centuries. And sometimes when a man come to you with the correct reasoning, when you say, well, I mean, not go along that way because black people can't unite. And you are the first one to peel off. You are the first one to trigger the disunity. I want to blame it on your so-called ability to see in the future where it will disintegrate. You know, I'll share something with them and then I'll go round it out. When I'm on the day of prison, we find ourselves in enough situation where for an ethnic group or upon a different level, for a national group or upon a different level, for a regional group, come into conflict with other groups. But to make it the reason a little bit more understand, I'll narrow it down to Jamaica. Sometimes we Jamaica in our prison come in a warfare, literally life and death warfare with other ethnic group in the prison, you know. And you see when we go so boom and come in our commune and say, brethren, oh, we are going to deal with a warrior, we are coming. You always have a one man or a group of people say, and the man that the community started, you know, we should not defend that. I'm out him looking now. Because him the first man I go say, well, you started, you know, so me gone. You always have that mentality. Always I look when we are going to go, they go war against the enemy. I look for the negative reason for the war within your own community. It never fails to happen. Never. I say if a man not step up in it and can me do it, you know. When a man who open him mouth to get attacked, they say, I hear my family, they say if you do attack, then you lift up from about you. Anyhow you come to try to create a disunity, me not care if I want to start it. We will deal with him later. But at the time when the war go bust, when your little disunity argument are going to make me sprinkle away and make this community become more vulnerable, it now go happen family. You're going to lift up from about you. And you know what is something else too, you know. You see the same man we try to blame a man in the community, so him don't want to defend the community. You see when something reach him, he might the first man will run come to the community and look help. And we still not go through him to the wolf, you know. But we are going to point it out to him after the war done. So you see you're a wicked individual. The only life you believe you're defending is your little one shallow life. But yeah man, it always happen man. Anytime a confrontation between our community and any community, there's always one or more individual where the first word come out time out. Me tell you say that command the monks we always a start problem. How that position going to defend the community? Well, it's the same principle when we're running around talking about black man can't unite. And because you're afraid. And a lot of times you know what to do. But because you're born so many generations of those who were born with the warrior blood and the warrior spirit, your whole DNA structure has been reformed into being a coward. Yeah, man. Yeah, man. So that is what we are dealing with. I could knock off this talk about black man can't use that. I could knock off this talk about every single African have to think one wave in order for liberation come. We now go down that unscientific principle really. We know what a cadre, when cadre need to take. We know what organizational ability we need to take. We know what we need to contribute to in order to make this movement grow and become more potent and exercise the potency that it has within its capability, but yet fail to recognize. Yeah, man, we have unity, man. And we have the brain power to get there, man. And we are going to do it. We are going to do it. We are going to do it. And one more thing I will say before we left. Same book, you know, I'm on production. Forged by Time upon Amazon, where I'm push up from me now. You see that book here? You know my objective with that book here? I want to sell 1 million copies. And I want to get 1 million subscribers. And we are going to move and we are going to do it. And we are going to do what's necessary to do it. So give me no support. Let me stir up myself and stir up the movement and stir up what we need to stir up. Get rid of the whole colonial talk about we can't unite. Get rid of the whole colonial talk about every man have to think one way. Get rid of the petty criticism. If you're going to deal with criticism, you're going to deal with constructive criticism that elevate the conceptual brain. When I want a criticism to tear down and create unnecessary anxiety and disunity amongst our people. So, you see, from now on, brethren and sisters, when I criticize, make we criticize from a constructive base. Let's not try to criticize from a I got your base. When you think the man will say I get you. Get you with them, we left them thing there, we call it as Jamaica, basic school, man. We left them thing there, basic school. Onward, forward, we are going, man. And we're not going to see changes come. And we're not going to see growth come. And we're not going to see real development. And the movement is open to one another. Yeah, but we understand the scientific principle of cadreism. And we understand the scientific principle of organizational building. So that's what the thing there, that's what it's said. So, until next time, brethren and sisters, one more time, man, they them support my book, Forged by Time. So we can stir up my things. I say literally, not go around, but I sell 1 million copies. And I can't sell 1 million copies without no participation. I want to bring others to the knowledge of the book. And it's good reading and it's based on history. And they show you how we left Jamaica and go to America and get the American government to recognize Rastafari. And even when you left from your foreign country, America, you get all of them constitutional right there, religiously and spiritually through the struggle we wage, of which me always proud to say it, you know, which was commenced by brothers and other brethren. So I can't get around that. So support. This is Gillie Priest and Gillie Priest Revolutionary Radio. One God, one name, one destiny, peace, love and unity. And like my brown brethren up in the hills, St. Andrew always said to me, honors and manners. Yeah. Enough big up and respect to my brethren. Until that time, peace out.